Welcome to episode 70 of Mom's Basement MMA. As always, it's Tyler, and I am with my friend who happens to be the 6th ranked women's pound for pound fighter and the number 1 ranked featherweight contender in Bellator, Arlene Blencowe. Arlene, how are you doing this lovely summer morning in Australia?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh well, it is an honor, and I just wanted to say I'm happy that we were able to do this despite the 16-hour time difference. I probably should have thought about this better, and I probably should get you at Wink next time you're there.
Yeah, well, considering I was there for 6 months, probably would have been a good idea.
Tell me a little bit about your camp. Obviously, I should probably first congratulate you. You fought Pam Sorensen last month. It was a dominant performance against an Invicta champion. A lot of people don't know that about Pam, but she was the best of the best in the weight class for the Invicta promotion. You fought a tough girl. That's a very tough opponent, and I think more people should probably give you credit for the taking the opponent that you did. Can you talk a little bit about how you prepared for her and kind of like what was your game plan? I know you talked about wanting to throw kicks. It didn't happen.
Yeah,
What was your game plan going into that one, and how happy are you with your performance?
definitely. I had a couple of hiccups in my fight camp, which had to change things up a little bit. So I felt like my preparation for that wasn't. I mean, I had a great preparation, but it wasn't. I wasn't able to do a lot of the things that I would normally do in fight camp. So that played its own problems mentally for me because I like to be able to tick off all the boxes, and a couple of boxes weren't completely ticked, and that itself brings the questions, and then the mind games start coming in. But as the number 1 ranked Bellator fighter and a fighter that stepped in the cage with Cyborg, like I fought her last year, so as the number 1 ranked fighter, I should be prepared to fight everybody, anybody, whoever Bellator approaches me, which I've done that in the past. Whoever they've given me, I'm like, yep, I'm going to fight that fight. So, it's still something that's really new for me at the moment to have people calling me out.
Right.
So Pam had a super respectful call out after her fight with Roberta. Knowing that my circumstances were that I was stuck in America and I was chasing a second fight. So she made a really smart career move, being new to the promotion, having that first fight, and then catapulting herself up to fighting that number 1 ranked fighter. So, I was excited for that fight because, any featherweight that's fighting sort of on the international scene, they're on my radar. So I was, aware of Pam and what sort of fight that she'd bring in. Being at Jackson's and having the coaching staff and all my training partners, I knew that there was a perfect fight camp for me to fight somebody like Pam. So, I was excited to showcase my wrestling. I wanted to do a little bit more rather than just being defensive in that aspect. But, so there's definitely a few things from the fight that I'm not happy with that I would have liked to have done better. But to walk away with a win and still be asking those questions is perfect. It's better than losing and having to ask those questions. So, I actually rewatched the fight yesterday back here at home. It was while we were waiting for the Bellator 272 to start. We went back and just watched my last 2 fights. I like to do that outside of, the hype up of the fight, and just so I can really analyze it and see if I was being overcritical at the time. But man, I landed some right hands and you could hear it. And she's one tough girl. Like those right hands were hard. So full credit to Pam and awesome girl, awesome opponent to fight, and very respectful.
The thing that really surprised me about Pam, and I say this with just the utmost amount of respect, she took a lot of punishment, a lot.
Yeah.
And like her toughness was definitely on display. Like you starched her multiple times. Like I thought there were a couple times during the bout that she was about to get knocked out. Like the fact, like I'm still amazed it went to it went through the full 15 minutes.
Well, there was credit to her though. She had like the perfect game plan to she dropped and shot off that cage so quick. Changed like it was if it, as the commentator said, if it had have been me a couple of years ago, I would have been on my back for the majority of that fight. So again, credit to my coaches and the training that I did to not have it go to the ground. But yeah, the speed. I mean, Mr. Jackson had warned me of that. He goes, she drops quick, and watching her back, she does. So yeah, we were ready for that. But yeah, I just got a little bit too keen, closed the distance too soon, and went a bit scrappy and stuff. But yeah, she took some big punches, and I thought it was almost over, and I was hoping for it to almost be over.
Yeah, well, I was, I personally would have given you an A plus, 10 out of 10. I thought it was a great performance for me. I think fighters are always going to look at their tape and nitpick things, and I think we're our own worst critics in a way. I think that's completely natural. But as a fan of you and looking at it, I thought it was a dominant performance. I was really happy to see, to your point, like the little subtle things like that, like the takedown defense, your clinch work, and things that you're doing to make sure that you continue to fight the bout on your terms, you are able to do. Your punches, like she was like blocking your fist with her face the entire fight. Like, and I felt like every single time you wanted to connect on her, you did. So I thought it was fantastic. I know you didn't. I know.
Usually don't throw punches unless I know that they're going to connect. I'm like, everyone's like, your accuracy's so good. And I'm like, no, it's just through laziness. I'm not throwing anything that's going to go to waste. Like, yeah, I think it's going to land.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, like, when you reflect back on this past year, 2 fights, two victories against 2 very tough girls. This is, of course, post Cyborg, and I think that's kind of for you. That was like the only time I've seen you lose, and like I saw it, like it hurt. That one hurt you. Like, you physically looked fine, but like I could only imagine. Yeah, I could only imagine like the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the camp. You talk a lot about being the Australian in the promotion. I know how much just representing your country and like getting gold around your waist means for you. Yep. And it was probably like a huge letdown. So like, when you go back home, like, are you thinking about the Cyborg fight? Like, are you trying to like just forget about fighting and just be a mom, be a wife for a while? Like, how did you just kind of like reprogram yourself to set up the killer 2021 that you had? Because this year has been fantastic for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. I think losing's always been such a great tool for me. But in saying that, like, I'm also, as we mentioned before, super critical when I win as well. So I don't let any opportunity go to waste with developing me as a fighter. But losses hit me hard. But yeah, like, there's no escaping. Like, fighting's on my mind, in my heart, 24 hours a day. I'm lucky that I've got, my family, my partner, my work, and everything like that. It's nice little distractions, but it's always there. It's at the core of me. So yeah, it just, like, I went back. We had an awesome camp here in Australia, despite the roller coaster of everything that COVID had tried to throw at us and that. But we prepared well for it. I was mentally prepared. And then the fight happened like that, which was, it was. That fight with Cris Cyborg was a career's worth of work. I'd been eyeing her off since before I'd even had my first MMA fight. I saw her fight. It was her return fight on Invicta after her suspension. And I'm like, I'm going to fight that girl. And it's just it. Like, I've always had that. And that's the same thing with going back to what I referred to before. I've never been scared of fighting anybody. And I've always picked those girls at the top. Which is what these girls down lower than me now will be doing to me. Well, if I believe that they're true fighters, they'll be looking at me saying, I want to fight. And Pam did that. So that's why I've got so much respect and credit for her, because I know that there's a lot of girls that don't want to fight me. So I was like, well, you're in the wrong sport. But yeah, so that Cyborg fight, it hit hard, it hurt, but I didn't dwell on it. Like, I didn't dwell on it like I did when I lost to Julia. My last loss before the Cyborg fight was in 2017. And that fight really hit hard because it was a 5-round fight that was super controversial. It was a split decision.
Right.
A lot of people thought I won it. And if that was the case, I would have been the Bellator world champion. So that
I thought you won it.
Yeah. So, I just didn't do enough. Like, you never leave to the judges' scorecards. And that's been a rule for a long, long time. And that's even with the Pam fight. Standing there, I was like, I thought I'd done enough. But again, and you never know. So that's why my rule is you go into fight and you finish fights, and that's why I finish fights. But yeah, so like after the Julia fight, I was in a really bad mental state. Approached that loss the wrong way. I was actually very, very close to retiring.
Hmm.
I'd made my mind up that I was going to retire. I'm just very, very lucky that my partner, um, he was very supportive and just gave me the right advice at the time. And then yeah, it was a progress like for the next probably year for me to get back into it properly. And then I fought Amber, and then yeah, so 2020 really was the year that 2019 was the year that I came back and really decided I wanted this. So yeah, but when I lost to Cyborg, I just had a different approach this time. It's like, okay, I lost, but what can I do to be a better fighter? And yeah, it was yeah, pretty much what I did this year. I went over to Jackson's. I dedicated myself. Wasn't meant to be a 6 month fight camp, but in hindsight, that worked out for the best. I was a full-time athlete for 6 months. I focused on nothing but my fighting, recovery, preparation. I was able to step away from the motherly role. I literally had to detach myself from that. You can't do too much on the phone
Right.
as a mother. Like yes. So that role got passed on to my partner, my children's stepmother, their father. So I was yeah lucky that I have huge support, and yeah, and I guess it paid off.
Wow, like that's and I'm so glad that we're talking about like the personal sacrifices that you're having to make being Australian. Like you literally have to fly to the opposite part of the world to take a fight. There's visa issues you have to go through, the COVID testing, uh, coming back home. I'm sure is not easy, like the quarantine rules, everything like that.
Yeah,
Like you're putting it all out there, like Dan Hooker. I know he's not an Aussie, I know he's a New
yeah,
Zealand guy, but like you hear his stories and I'm just like, this is insane. Like I
yeah.
wouldn't blame anybody for not wanting to be active internationally right now. I wouldn't blame anybody for that.
It's ridiculous in a sense. I feel for Dan being a mother myself because his little girl is still little. Like my children are older.
Yeah.
So not once in the 6 months that I was away were they on the phone, crying or telling me that, that obviously they miss me, but they
Hmm.
understand why I was over there and why it was all happening too. But it's ridiculous. Like, yeah, the governments are making it hard with the regulations, restrictions, quarantines, this and that, but they'll be the first to congratulate and take ownership of a sports person being from that country when they succeed. Like yeah, they put all of these hurdles up, but then yeah, when Dan's like writing his success, they're like, yeah, he's from New Zealand, like the proud New Zealander, but they don't make it easy. So
No,
you know,
not at all. And I just think for the international fighters, like we as Americans, like I think we don't really think about all that stuff. We don't think about the plane rides. We don't think about the visa hassles. We don't think about all the things that you guys are having to do to get ready to prepare and come over here, and like the self-sacrifice, like being away from your family for 6 months. That's insanely difficult. Like I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that.
yeah, I mean, I didn't have a choice. Like, yeah, at the end of the day, it was a 6 week fight camp, and then that got moved to 8 weeks because the fight date got moved. So I was like 8 weeks, which actually in hindsight worked out better because those first 2 weeks at Jackson Wink, with the altitude, dealing with jet lag, like yeah, it's 2 weeks of fight camp that are pretty much gone. So yeah, 8 week fight camp, then fight week, and then a week of just winding down before flyback. So yeah, it was meant to be 10 weeks, and then yeah, everything happened with the lockdowns. Australia shut their borders to I was going to say to the world, but they shut their borders to Australian citizens.
Yeah.
Like me as an Australian citizen was not allowed to return to my own country. So very, very lucky that I had the opportunity just to fly back to Albuquerque. I got my apartment back at Jackson Wink in the dorms, and got back to training. And then, yeah, so it was just so much growth. Growth physically, like technically, but just mentally too. Like, I really owned who I am as a fighter now. Like, I've stepped into the shoes of, yeah, I am the number one ranked fighter. I am considered a veteran in Bellator female. Like I'm the longest run female fighter within the Bellator promotion, both featherweight and strawweight. Yeah, I hold all these records, and I was like, holy shit! Like I'm, you know, a little while ago, I was just still thinking I was that new, Australian fighter that's sort of on the scene and this and that. But I'm like, okay, like, yeah, you've been here for a while now.
But it's been a long time coming for you. Like I look back at your story, I start digging deeper into you and just looking at the past and looking at all the fights that you've had. And you turned pro in 2013, and like the world of mixed martial arts has changed drastically since then.
Huge.
Women's mixed martial arts is still relatively new. Can you talk, Arlene, a little bit about like what are some of the changes that you've seen since you've turned professional in 2013 in mixed martial arts?
Oh, it's been awesome. I mean, 2013, so I turned professional, which was actually not even just turning professional. I actually had my first MMA fight. I had no amateur fights. I was a professional boxer, so female boxing was the big thing. And then Ronda Rousey came onto the scene, and all of a sudden MMA became a household name. Like everyone's like, and it happened for years. Everyone's like, when are you going to fight Ronda? And I was like, well, for starters, she's not in my weight division. And then, yeah, it just, which I mean, I can fight at bantamweight, so technically she is in my weight division. But it's just, yeah, the biggest thing, I mean, the talent, females. I mean, Ronda Rousey was the talent back then, and she was headlining cards. But then since then, I mean, new divisions have come in. I mean, bantamweight was the division, and then yeah, you've got strawweight, you've got flyweight, you've got featherweight, and you've got champions in each of those divisions.
And now we have lightweights too,
Oh, of course, so
which is crazy.
yeah. And I mean, gosh, Kayla Harrison's a force to be reckoned with. Like she's a beast. So, but yeah, like there's girls in each of these divisions that are fighting like equally as good to the men. So it's not like, female fighters, like we're mixed martial artists and guys and girls and fans, I should say, appreciating watching all fights, like both of us, men and female fighting. There's no distinction between the two.
I
But yeah,
I kind of disagree. I think there's a distinction. I prefer the women's fights because they always bring it.
yeah,
Like they always seem to be complete dog fights. They always seem to be that way. It's very rare that I watch a women's fight and it's like a snooze fest.
yeah.
I just feel like it's just like complete violence
I
every single time I see it, and I love it.
One of my teammates driving back from practice the other day, and we were talking about, why we fight this and that. And I'm like, whenever like females who fight, we're a different breed because it's not your normal thing that a female would want to do. Like
Yeah.
I'm still a girly girl. Like I said to you, I was late for this interview because I was covered in fake tan. But yeah, I know that I've got something different, like deep down inside of me. So whenever I'm, training females for the first time or, helping out sort of the black tie boxing, corporate boxing events and females are in there, you look at them and you think, okay, like, what's this girl's story? Because it's either, trauma, getting over that or like, years of like suppressed emotions or just, yeah, there's a little story, but it's not normal for females to be in this. So yeah, there's a reason we've got something extra deep down inside of us, and that's why females bring it in fights. Because
I think we see that. I can only imagine, like pretending I'm like you for a second. It's like wow, like what's a pretty girl like you going into a ring for and like trying to punch somebody? Like why are you doing that? You should be doing something else. Like you should be doing something different. And after a while, that would probably piss me off and start to irritate me, and I would start thinking to myself like, no, like this is my calling, this is what I'm good at, and I'm about to prove it to you. Like I'd have that like internal, I don't know what it is. I think I'd just like put it all out there because I feel like I'd have something to prove to people every single time.
yeah, yeah.
That's my theory.
I've had this guy that does my eye appointments, my medicals for my fights, and he's been the guy that's done them now. So I've been with Bellator for 7 years, almost 8 years, and he every time I go in there, he says the same thing. Why does a pretty girl like you need to? Surely there's other ways that you can earn an income. He goes, the brain damage that's associated with fighting, blah blah blah. Like every time, and I sit there and think to myself, probably 1 or 2 appointments away now from saying, like, I mean, he keeps going on about the brain damage. I'm like, he has the same conversation with me every time I'm in here. Does he forget what he said?
Maybe he
Like,
has brain damage.
brain damage. But yeah, you'd get it. Like, I mean, I don't take offense to any of it. Like, I mean, it's almost like a backhanded compliment. Like, I mean, yeah, pretty girl like you. I'm like, okay, well, you complimented me. I'll just take it as
Right.
that.
No, I completely understand, and it's like I think that's my hypothesis when it comes to female fighting. I love it. I think Invicta is like one of the coolest promotions ever.
For
Um,
sure.
it like all of those fights are very entertaining, and they should make like a movie about you. Like I'm looking at like all these fights, like you're fighting on these cards in Australia, and like it doesn't come naturally to you, like at least record wise it doesn't. Like you're in the red for a little while in your career. Like you start off, it's not like the fairy tale, it's not a fairy tale. Like there's probably a point where you're sitting back, you know, you get $200 for showing up and maybe a beer, and you're in some like filthy pub in Australia somewhere caked in blood, and you're like there's got to be a point where you're like am I like dumb? Am I like making a dumb, terrible decision? Like, can you talk to me a little bit about those early fights in Australia and and just kind of like the journey that you've had to get to where you are as the number one ranked
Yeah.
contender in
I
Bellator?
mean, my whole career, in a sense, yeah, it's, I mean, my very, very first fight. So when I fought in 2008 as an amateur, um, yeah, the very first fight, so my whole goal was to be a boxer, represent Australia, go to the Olympics. So that's why I started the whole mixed martial arts thing. And my very, very first fight, I thought was a boxing fight, was training for a boxing fight, was super excited, still going through the nerves, like, holy shit, I'm going to do this. And literally a week out of that fight, the head coach to the gym came up to me because he saw me doing my training. He goes, how come I haven't seen you do any kicks? Like, and I sort of laughed at him thinking, I'm like, because I've got a boxing fight. He goes, no, 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 you've got a Muay Thai fight. It's a Muay Thai fight. And I was like, what the fuck? Throwing a kick. Like, I mean, throwing kicks in like fitness classes. So
Sure.
like a fitness class is completely different to a fight. And then, so I'll look back at that moment and then also the fight itself and think that sort of set the pace for the rest of my career. Because, yeah, I mean, most people probably would have turned around and said, oh, well, no, 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 pull me out of that fight. But I didn't. I was like, okay, well, fuck it, let's fight. And that motto, fuck it, let's fight, I definitely should put on a shirt, because I've said that my whole career, and I said it my last fight too. There's been points in my career where I probably should have pulled out of fights through injuries, through severe injuries, but I've gone, fuck it, let's fight. Because again, I've put myself into thinking like the gladiators back in the day fought injured, starving, on their deathbed, and they fought to the death. And I'm like, you know what? We are modern day gladiators. People have said that about fighters. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to live it to that. And for me, it feels good knowing that I have fulfilled every fight contract I've ever signed. I've never left a fighter high and dry through me pulling out. I've had a lot of fighters pull out on me, and I know what it feels like. And but yeah, it's something that I go to. I mean, no one will probably give me enough credit, but you're right. My record there for a while was in the red. And that was primarily like when I first started MMA. I started training in the January. I'd had 2 professional boxing fights at the time, and there was nobody on the scene that would fight me. It was just, yeah, it was a really, really quiet time in Australian boxing, and, you know, bringing fighters in from another country and this and that just wasn't viable because I just didn't have the sponsorship backing and the money and this and that. So started training in the January of 2013, grappling, wrestling, doing, yeah, jiu-jitsu, literally scraping the surface. Everything was super defensive, you know, learning how to do a takedown defense, learning an armbar defense, learning, yeah. Compared to the training I'm doing now, you can't even really call it training, but it was a start. And then, yeah, by April, so 4 months into that training, I got the chance to have my first fight against a purple belt.
Oh, wow.
Which, yeah, so I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, let's fight. And then, yeah, I hit her with a right hand. So everyone knew, like, yeah, boxing background. It's funny because I literally stepped into that Angerfist name. That's how Angerfist came about. I came from a boxing background. When I went to MMA, I was just like, shit, these are the only weapons I have, because I wasn't a kicker. I wasn't a wrestler. I had no ground game. All I had were these hands. And that's how Angerfist started. So I hit her with a right hand, and she literally fell back, rolled back on herself. I was like, kill, ran in, not realizing anything to do with the whole MMA. That's something that you just don't do now, because she actually literally grabbed me, got me in an armbar, face down. Same sort of armbar as what Marloes Kuna beat me in, but it was my face was pushed up against the cage, and my daughter was sitting front row seat
Ugh.
watching me. And it was, yeah, literally my arm was getting ripped off, and obviously tapped, and I lost my first MMA fight. And went back out to the change room, and my daughter's like, please mum, can you never do that again? Because yeah, small gloves, like it always just a bit confronting for her. She's like, can you please just stick to boxing? And I looked at her and I was like, I don't think so, no, sorry. I'm like, yeah, again, another point in my career, which was like, it set the pace. Like that loss was like, I need to go back and be better. I need to go back and do better. And yeah, and then that first year of MMA, I had like 8 fights, which is crazy. Like I
It's
was fighting,
insane. Yes.
a lot of, a lot of, not enough time to learn anything. And yeah, so I wasn't really taking my MMA sort of seriously in a sense of worrying about my record. It was literally just something for me to do because I wasn't getting my boxing fights, because my goal was to be boxing, be a world champion and boxer. MMA is just something, a bit of fun, and I definitely wasn't earning much money from it. That's for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, a couple of $100 here and there. $100 one time. I fought 3 times on one night in a gauntlet. So that's another cool career thing. Like when I was telling my team back at Jackson Wink about fighting 3 times in one night, they're like, 3 MMA fights. I'm like, yep, three round MMA fights in one night. And for me, that's a cool thing to say. Like that shit's crazy.
That's insane. Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, I've had some really cool moments, and you're right. Like a movie would be cool, but I think a book would do things more justice, because there's a lot of little hidden things. If you were to look at my record, you'd be like, okay, like yeah, I'm 15-8 at the moment, but yeah, those like all but 4 losses were just learning sort of curve.
That's amazing. You've only lost 8 times. When you consider all that, like you showed up, like I didn't know how to like do jiu-jitsu or anything like that into an MMA fight. That's insane.
Yeah, no, it was all crazy, and the fact that even like the one submission when I've got on my record, it was crazy. The girl was taking me down, and then I don't know what she did, but anyway, I kind of like looked up and I was like, I think I know this position, because she literally fell into a triangle. I was like. And then my coach is like, look at her. I was like, oh, okay. And then yeah, she tapped. I was like, holy shit, I just got to submit it, but I didn't actually do it. She fell into it, but I'm like, I'll take that. So yeah, that was actually a bit of a goal. Like I set a few goals for my Pam fight, because I knew that it was going to be a great showcase of mixed martial arts, because she's a wrestler, but she also comes from a kickboxing background. But yeah, I just thought, okay, this could be a chance for me to like, take her down and go for submission. So I did have a goal in that fight to win by submission. Another goal was to have 100% takedown defense, which I did achieve that one. But yeah, so I was obviously, like I said before, happy with that win. But yeah, there's some goals that I set that I didn't follow through with. So
Arlene, can you talk a little bit? Like, there's this one. Like when I go into your background, I look at your fights, there's just like one chapter where I get a little confused. So in 2015, 2016, you go 2-2 in Bellator. And then I think it was after the 2016 fight, I think it was the first time you fought Bud. You go back to Australia and you fight again in Australia. Like, did they just not renew you? And did they tell you, like, come back after you've, like, put some W's together in Australia? What happened?
That was actually so yeah, I'd finished my first Bellator contract, and the UFC was sort of poaching me a little bit there, and so if you look at that, there was one fight that I fought at bantamweight, and the second fight was actually meant to be at bantamweight too, but that was against Amanda Lomez, who's now in the UFC. Mm-hmm. I was meant to fight her. She was meant to fly over from Brazil, but she had visa issues. So I had a last minute replacement. That's when Janae Harding came in. So that went from being a bantamweight fight and then jumped up to featherweight. So the thing was, the UFC wanted me to have two, like, or they said a couple. So I took it as 2. Fights at bantamweight, and to get some good quick wins, to then obviously fix up my record, but obviously
Mm-hmm.
just to also show that I could fight at bantamweight. And, but anyway, I got two quick finishes,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, Bellator actually after that came back with a contract that we were happy with, and yeah, so I took that route rather than. So it was never a matter of like Bellator not wanting me. I
Mm-hmm.
was just sort of seeing what other opportunities I had, and yeah, that was my first opportunity that I could have gone to the UFC. There's been a few other times since then, but I've been yeah, loyal to Bellator. They've looked after me, and keep coming back with these contracts I can't turn down.
Hey, I love the fact that you've never been in the UFC personally. I do think that it's a very solid promotion. I like the fact that they're willing to work with the fighters and let them have the banners and let them have like their own sponsors. I think that's incredibly important. Just kind of thinking about being like if I were like an unknown fighter, yeah, I don't know how good that like Venom deal is.
Sure. I like my biggest thing, and I've always said it. Like for me, my record when I got signed with Bellator was 5 wins, 4 losses.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I got a couple more wins, but still, that sort of record wasn't good enough for the UFC to look at me or want to sign me. But yeah, Bellator have done nothing but yeah, they saw me when nobody else did, and they've given me opportunities. They've given me a platform to grow. They've given me a platform to change my life and my family's life. And yeah, we've been there for a few contracts now. And, I saw Scott at my last fight, and I was sort of like, gave him a little bit of banter as to when he's bringing a promotion to like here to Australia, and sort of told him that he's going to have to renew that contract when he brings it here then, because I'm the fighter that's going to headline that card. I'm the pioneer of Australians. I was the first female signed to Bellator and this and that. So yeah, so
Let's talk about some more Aussies. So, like, who are some Aussie fighters that you would like to see in Bellator that aren't in there right now? Whether they're like on the local scene in Australia that just people don't know about or don't think to ask about.
yeah, I'm well aware of what's happening here on the Australian scene now. Just yeah, for life after fighting for me, we'll go down the management route. I'd love to, I'll manage some male fighters too, but I like the idea of working with female fighters. Being a female myself, you know, everything that entails with being a female athlete. So I just feel like that I can work well with them. Hopefully, they're more females like me. I don't know if it's like, see, most of my circle of girls are like me too. I don't know about working with real girly girls. They probably won't work with me, but yeah, like there's a lot of local talent. I've got a group of girls that I'm training with at the moment. I would love to see them signed to Bellator. I'd love to fight on the same card as them, so hopefully they get signed soon. But yeah, locals on the scene. Like I know a few of them are just been signed to the UFC, so that's sort of the route they're taking it. And it's a hard one because there's a lot of people that still see the UFC as like the be all and end all.
Right.
Like actually a local, like I know one of the girls I was just working with at Jackson Week, Lydia Warren. So she's waiting to have her pro debut. She's a 115er, and she's totally ready to step on the big scene. And it's just like, come on, one of the like she just needs to have that. COVID's really just messed up her preparations with like just being able to have that first debut fight. But that girl's a beast,
Wow.
and she's tiny. On the Australian scene here, like I know Danielle Hayes,
Mm-hmm.
she's definitely ready to be on the Bellator scene. I think Bellator were looking at her a little while ago, but I might have been some visa issues with because she's English. I'm not too sure if she's got that fixed up, but she's definitely like someone that's ready to be on the international scene. I want to start a female fight promotion here, similar to what Invictus does. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, have the girls come across, and when they're good enough, and if they're good enough after a winning record, get that contract with Bellator, because there is a lot of talent, and I feel like I'm being put on the spot right now because I'm going to be kicking myself. Like later on, I'm like, I could have name dropped this. This would have been their opportunity. But yeah, there's a lot, and males as well that there aren't any Australian guys signed to Bellator, and and there is ridiculous amounts of talent here.
So I had a question. When I think of mixed martial arts and I think of Aussies, I think of you, I think of Alex, and then I think of Tai Tuivasa. So is it like a code if like is there like a rule as an Aussie, like if he says like you have to do a shoey with him, like you would do it?
Hell no, he knows that I won't too.
You know what? That's like the most disgusting thing I think I've ever heard of. But if he told me I had to do one, then I would do it because it's Tai
I was
Tuivasa.
actually trying to work out like at what stage of drunkenness, like I've been at, because like Ty and I are good friends,
Hmm.
and we've been out drinking a few times. We've got mutual sponsors and stuff like that, and I always say before, I'm like, I wonder at what stage of drunkenness I could get to where he would give me a shoey and I'd do it, and I'm thinking. No, there wouldn't be. So there hasn't been yet, and so yeah, I don't think so. I mean, mine would be, some sort of special event, like I know, when I become the Bellator world champion or something, like, or just like would have like a something like that. But even then, I'm not really throwing it out there because I really don't want one.
So
I
let's
didn't.
just say on the hypothetical Sydney card, right? Let's just say you fight Cyborg and beat her in Sydney. Would you do a shoey then? You'd have to. You'd have to.
I didn't realize with the shoey. I thought like the pouring the drink into someone's dirty shoe and drinking it, that disgusted me enough. I didn't realize that you spat in it too, or somebody spat in it.
That's a thing.
Yeah, so they pour it in and then they've got to spit in it and then you drink it. So once I found that out, I was like, hell no, 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 no.
Wow. Well, maybe like hold the spit. I think the shoey's gross enough.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I was actually wedding last weekend, and they had the bridal table, and then the groom was giving his speeches. Next minute, he's doing a shoey, like after the speeches, and I was like, oh my god, I've never seen anything like this before. Anyway, so I videoed it and tagged Ty, and he put it up on his story. Anyway, the groom was like beside himself because they're all like, massive.
Uh,
I'm like, I've never seen a shoey done at a wedding before, but
well, I don't know what it's called, but when Alex won against Ortega, he did. I don't know. He drank beer off of a thong,
yeah.
Yeah. That I don't know which is grosser. Maybe that's probably like more hygienic doing it off of like a sandal.
Well, I mean, most people would have socks on in their shoes, so I mean, I think a shoe would be cleaner. A slide, though.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which is grosser.
I've always said you can give me a glass and I'll drink out.
I'm definitely content drinking out of a glass. That is definitely for certain. And before I let you go, Arlene, I want to ask you just kind of a little bit about kind of where you are at your career right now. Like, you look amazing, and everyone always asks you that annoying question, but I'm not going to ask you that annoying question because if you retire, I'm going to be really upset. Like,
Yeah.
you look so amazing. Keep going. If you're having fun, why would you? Why would you want to?
100%. I'm not taking damage. Like, I mean, I'm the first to, I'm an honest person with myself. And I have to focus a lot more on recovery at the moment. I do feel that I feel my body getting older, but it just makes me smarter. So I'm a smarter athlete now, which is what I probably should have been back 10 years ago. But no, I'm not ready to retire anytime soon. I've got a big year next year. At the moment, though, like I'm 3 weeks post-fight. I'm back here with my family after being away from 6 months. I'm seeing my friends. I'm enjoying this time of year with everyone. Still training that, though. Still getting like 2 sessions in a day.
Well,
I've been back on the gym. I've been on the mats. I've been, doing everything. But it's because I love it. This is what I do. I love what I do, and I've come back here after being away for 6 months, and I've put myself straight back into the slot of my routine, and what I do in life is what I enjoy, and I've built this life. So that was a really nice realization when I got back, is that I didn't change anything that I do. So next year I plan to go back to Albuquerque. March is probably the date. I've actually booked in for surgery next week.
Wait, you have surgery next week?
Yeah. So this is like the whole Pam fight. Like I had a mishap in one of the wrestling classes that I did myself. So it wasn't even my training partner that did it. It was I just pushed off and I tore my meniscus and in my left knee, and then it got locked and I couldn't move it, and I was on crutches for a week, almost a week. But yeah, that was like 5 weeks out of the fight. So that was another, and this will become another pivotal moment in my career. Everyone back here, all my coaches, my partner was saying, you need to pull out of the fight. It was happened the same week that I signed the fight contract. So the fight was official. And it was like one of those things. They're like, you've spent all this time to become the number one fighter in the division. Why are you going to risk it against a girl that's new to that? You don't owe her anything by fighting. She's just had a fight. So if the fight gets cancelled, it's not like, you're doing anything like wrong by her. She offered you the fight just because she knew your situation, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I just had some real conversations with myself, and I was like, Arlene, if you are the number one ranked fighter in this division, you can fight this girl on one leg. And that was what I was telling myself. Like, if you believe that you're the number one fighter, like, yeah, have belief that you can beat this girl. So yeah, if knowing that now, if you go back and watch the fight, after watching the Diana fight, how different the two versions of me were. The Diana fight, I threw a lot of kicks. The movement, I was moving a lot more. And yeah, with the Pam fight, I was a bit restricted. I didn't throw any kicks that landed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had to pace myself because the cardio wasn't there. I wasn't able to do the hill sprints that I normally do. I wasn't able to, get that conditioning in. My gym sessions, my strength and conditioning sessions were hindered with a lot of movements that I couldn't do. I wasn't able to do the hard wrestling rounds. So yeah, it was a very, very compromised camp compared to what I normally do. And
that's amazing. I had no hint. You looked fine to me. Like, I didn't think anything of it. So you look great.
So in my head, I was like, fuck it, fight.
On a peg leg, you looked fantastic.
Yeah. So, but it'll be another thing. Like, it paid off, but don't worry, it could have gone the other way, and I would have been like, "Damn, Arlene, why did you do that?"
But you're a fighter's fighter, though, and just getting to know you and like knowing the girls that you're willing to fight, I think that's proof. Like, you're not taking easy fights. Like, you will fight anybody. Everyone says that, but like, you look at the records, you start looking at the names they fight, and it's like, no, like, you say that shit, but like, your record, like, when you look at the list of names, you're not fighting anybody. You're avoiding people. I mean, calling it as I see it. I hope you get an opportunity to get a rematch. I don't want you to punch down anymore. You had the fight against Cyborg. You fought two tough girls. I think that's enough. I think winning the bout as convincing as you did, I think that's enough for me personally, but I'm not Scott. There's a lot of talk about Kayla potentially showing up in Bellator, and everyone's always, the natural assumption is like, well, that's the mega fight you have to make. I wouldn't give her that fight, though. I'd make her fight you first, and I would say, no, like, you guys got to fight, and then whoever wins that fight can fight Cris. Is that where you're at? Are you kind of preparing for that? That would be the right
thing to do, but I understand why promotions don't do that. It's almost like when Cyborg came across and got the first shot with Julia. It's like, why risk this person fighting a lower ranked fighter and blowing the opportunity for the mega fight? Like, the mega fight is Kayla and Cyborg. So yeah, I get it. I get why these things happen, and that's why I've never been a person to jump up and down and say, I deserve this, I want this. It's like, I'll put it all up there to the guy up there. When things are meant to happen, it's meant to happen, and I'll just keep doing what I've got to do. So if there is another fighter I've got to fight, which is unfortunate, because when you look at other people's track to the world championship shot, I always feel like I'm the one that has to do a lot more work. But yeah, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I just love to fight. So as long as I've got someone to fight, I don't care who it is. Hopefully I'll be back in there sort of the first half of next year, towards the middle of the year, because like I said, I've got surgery and then recovery and that. But back in the Bellator cage, and hopefully it's for the title, but we'll see.
I will definitely hit you back up once you have an announcement, and we will do this again when you have a opponent booked. Arlene, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity. I know you have a lot of people that support you and a lot of sponsors that help pay your bills. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that for a second before we sign off?
Awesome. Yeah. I do have a lot of people who support me. So before I go to the sponsors, obviously I'm super grateful for that because yeah, definitely the last 6 months showed how great all my sponsors are because I wouldn't have been able to do what I do um, without all of them. But yeah, just all of my coaches and training partners. Like I've just like I said, spent the last 6 months at Jackson Wink. Everyone knows already the caliber of coaches and training partners there. That's why I went over there for so long. But I also want to give my coaches and training partners back here in Australia a big thank you. Um, I wouldn't have been the fighter ready to be on that world stage training over there against the caliber of people I train with if it wasn't for what I get to do here back at home. Like I've got coaches who will drop everything to meet me for a session to suit my timetable and schedule. And it's always been the case. I've always had to juggle kids and work at this and that. And yeah, I've always had phenomenal coaches, the people that I work with now, all my training partners. So yeah, I just thank you to all of those, everyone. As for sponsors, I've got Gamecoin, who are my newest sponsor. They've been phenomenal with just their outside work with charities that they're donating to, and they've got another donation that they're going to donate towards my charity, the Angerfist Scholarship. So, but yeah, long-term sponsors that have been on board: Class Fencing, Muscle Bros, Snatched Activewear, Freedom Chef, so Resolute TV. Three Kings Finance, Kendra Lust, who else we've got? Chatter Paint, Southlands Real Estate, Victoria Cladding. Yeah, you guys are all awesome, and I appreciate all of the help this year and all the other years. Yeah, without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your time, Arlene, and I hope you have a fantastic summer.